Hello friends, and it's funkyplaybrothers, and please remember to subscribe to our YouTube. And today I'm reading part 5 of Five Nights at Freddy's, Tales from the PIZZAPLEX, Book 8, B7-2 by Scott Cawthon, Adrian Wagger, and Kelly Para. Last time we left off, Billy, I think his name was, had B7 inside of him, or was inside of him, and then he moved in with his grandma after B7 got out of wherever he was and probably got back inside Billy. Straight back chair with Florio's seat cushions. Come on, I'll show you the rest. It won't take long. She led him to a gallery-style kitchen with white cabinets and a yellow and green striped linoleum floor. The appliances looked old-fashioned to Billy, they had rounded edges and lots of chrome. Although his grandma's house was in a quiet area, and Billy had heard outside the house were a few birds tweeting and the wind rustling the tree branches, the inside of Grandma's house seemed noisy to him. To start with, it was filled with the big clock's endless ticking. Billy could hear it clearly in the kitchen. It also had other intrusive sounds. The refrigerator's motor hummed loudly, and what Billy assumed was a furnace alternately rumbling and thumped. Leaving the kitchen through a doorway on its opposite end, his grandma turned right into a small hallway and pointed out a closed door. "That's the pantry," she said. She continued on and pointed through the open doorway. "Laundry room." Then she turned right again. Billy realized that they were coming out in a opposite end of the hallway that extended into the house from the entryway. The hall ran in a straight line from the front door to a back door next to the laundry room. They'd just done a loop, Billy realized, staring at the entryway and going through the dining room and into the kitchen to end up back at the back of the hall, opposite the front door. A narrow flight of stairs went up to the left of the end of the hallway. "That leads to the second floor," Billy's grandma said. "It's not much more than an attic. I use it for storage." Billy peered up the stairs and nodded. Billy's grandma turned away from the stairs and motioned for him to follow her down the main hallway, heading back toward the front door. She waved a hand toward the left side of the hall. There were just 2 bedrooms and 1 bath between them. She said as she led Billy down the hall, "We'll have to share." Billy nodded again. Billy's grandma stopped in front of the first of 3 open doorways on the left side of the hall. "This is my room," she said. She moved on and led Billy through the next doorway into a small room that held a double bed, a nightstand, a dresser, and a desk. The bed was covered with a plain dark green bedspread. Billy looked around. He screwed up his face at the room's walls. They were covered with floral wallpaper. Tiny yellow rosebuds in a dainty pattern. On top of the wallpaper hung framed sketches of individual flowers. He tried very hard not to sigh as he succeeded barely. Billy he had said he would be still trying to figure out what Billy the man liked and didn't like. For sure he didn't like floras. Maybe noticing the pinched look Billy probably had on his face, his grandma said, "You can change this room to suit you." She cocked her head and studied him. "But not if you intend to make it all gray and filled with metal like that house of yours." Billy raised his head and studied the room. How would he decorate it if he could choose? He wouldn't pick gray and metal again. That was B7's choice. Billy was going to have to figure out what he liked. At least he had a place to stay while he discovered his own tastes. "How about you take a little rest?" Billy's grandma said behind his back. I'll bring in your things after that." Billy turned and looked at his grandma. She raised a severely arched gray brow at him. I gathered up a few of your belongings from the house, she said, but then I bought you some new things, too. You need color, young man. Billy immediately felt guilt, or was it shame? He felt bad that his 82-year-old grandma was going to have to carry his possessions into the house. Billy didn't know much about how normal humans lived, but he was sure they didn't let grandmas lift things for them. Billy, however, could barely walk around, much less carry something. Even though Billy was no longer wearing a brace on his left leg, he still had trouble balancing on the one leg and the crutch. Billy turned around again. He waited until he heard the bedroom door close, and he could barely hear his grandma's heavy footfalls. She wore heavy-soled shoes and clomped like a person twice her size. Then he turned and crossed the bare wood floor to the bed. There he sat and listened to the tick, tick, tick that went on and on and on. Billy might not have liked his grandma much, and he didn't like the inside of her house, but he did like what she made for dinner that night. It was red food, furthering his conclusions that he was going to want to eat a lot of red foods. You used to like lasagna when you were little, his grandma said, as she put a thick slab of pasta layered with cheese and red sauce on a green stoneware plate in front of Billy. Billy still liked lasagna. He discovered it was great, so great that he finally spoke. This is really good, he said. His grandma tilted her head and quirked her lips for a few seconds. Then she said, "Thank you." She shook her head. "It's going to take some time for me to understand you." She pointed his mouth. "How do you eat without a tongue?" "Very carefully," Billy said. His grandma barked out a gravelly laugh. It was the first time he could remember hearing her laugh. Even in his childhood memories, he hadn't been trying to be funny. It was hard eating without a tongue. He had to concentrate to make sure he didn't get things stuck in his throat. After they finished their lasagna, his grandma gave him a slice of chocolate cake. The cake confirmed that what he concluded about chocolate. It was his new favorite thing. After the cake, his grandma asked if he wanted to play checkers. He told her he didn't know how, so she taught him. Checkers were okay, Billy thought. It was fun to play a game. Billy, however, decided he preferred video games. After the game, Billy went to his room. His grandma had left his possessions on the floor by the door. He pushed them with his crutch over to the end of his bed. There he sat down and went through them. He didn't find much that mattered to him. His grandma had only brought from Billy's house a couple items of his old gray clothing, the vibrant colors of the shirt she'd bought to go with a couple pairs of new jeans made it clear she thought of gray. The rest of what was in the box was toiletries and a few books. Billy frowned. Where was his computer? Standing, Billy went to his bedroom door. He opened it and called out, "Grandma." Clomping sounded above Billy's head. Then it came down the stairs. "What is it, Billy?" his grandma asked. She had a smudge of red paint on her cheek. The red looked like blood. It made Billy uneasy. "Where's my computer?" Billy asked. His grandma shook her head. "You don't need a computer. All that digital stuff is part of what got you into trouble in the first place. That and TV." The mention of TV made Billy realize that he hadn't seen one in his grandma's house. "Where's your TV?" he asked. Maybe it was in her bedroom, and he just hadn't spotted it. She shook her head. "Don't have one. Filled with all kinds of nonsense. TV like that show that started all your troubles to begin with. No computer, no TV. Before you ask, I don't have a cell phone either," Billy's grandma said. Billy raised his eyebrows and stared at his grandma. "No cell phone?" "Good gracious, no. Infernal things," his grandma said. After she took a few seconds to figure out what he'd said, who didn't have a cell phone, Billy thought. Everyone had a cell phone. I have a good old rotary phone in my bedroom, his grandma said, as if reading his thoughts. That's enough for me. Billy shook his head. I'm going to bed, he said. He needed to be alone. He needed to think. Sweet dreams, his grandma said. She watched him make a painstaking turn. Then she looked away from him. Closing his bedroom door behind him, Billy leaned against it and shook his head. No computer, no TV, no cell phone, nothing but too many flowers and a clock that wouldn't shut up. Billy hadn't exactly lived a busy life as an animatronic, but his days hadn't been filled with silence. He'd nearly always been online when he was a robot. He spent lots of time on social media. He played online games and he'd watched hours of videos and done research on the internet. His brain had constantly simulated. He was going to lose his mind in this house. I'd be happier in the hospital, Billy thought. At least they have TV. Tomorrow morning, Billy decided he'd tell his grandma he wanted to go back to the hospital. Billy wanted to go now, but he knew it was late, and demanding to be taken back tonight would be rude. Even his newly developing human self understood that feeling. That feeling better for having made his decision. Billy slowly got ready for bed. One of the things that his grandma had bought him was a pair of burgundy red pajamas. He put those on, went out into the hall, and headed toward the bathroom. Billy didn't hear his grandma moving around. She must have been in her bedroom. But if she was silent. All Billy could hear was the refrigerator's hum and the furnace's rumble and the tick-tick-tick of the grandfather clock. Billy went into the bathroom. After using the toilet, he brushed his teeth. Then he noticed he had a smudge of lasagna sauce on his jaw. The streak reminded him of the paint he'd seen on his grandma's face. Like the paint, the sauce looked like a smear of blood. Billy's hand started to shake, trying to steady it. He reached for the washcloth and got it wet. When the wet terry cloth slid over the edge of the skin, Billy's breath caught in his throat. Behind the slippery sound, the tick-tick-tick of the clock suddenly sounded even louder than usual. Billy's breath started coming out in little gasps. His leg went weak. He sank down onto the closed toilet seat. I remember, he wished he didn't. Sweat beaded on Billy's forehead and chills racked his body. He felt like someone was pushing on his chest. I can't go back to the hospital, Billy thought. If Billy was in the hospital, B7 would find him. Billy took a deep breath and managed to find the strength to stand. Picking up the washcloth, he cleaned off his face. Then he returned to his room. As Billy got under the crisp yellow sheets beneath the green bedspread, he heard a muffled trill. Billy froze and listened. The deep jangle started to repeat, but was cut off. Billy realized he was tense, and he shook his head at his overreaction. It was just his grandma's old rotary phone, he realized. Billy exhaled and settled in bed. Lying back on the pillows, Billy tried to ignore the relentless ticking of the grandfather clock. He closed his eyes and blotted out the flowers looking down at him from every wall in the bedroom. Billy might not have liked it here, but he had to stay. Until he had his strength back and had uncovered more of who Billy the person was going to be, he would be safer in this little country cottage. Even with all the flowers and ticking, he was not only far away from the hospital, he was far away from his old body, and he wanted to keep it that way. So, friends, thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next part 6, where we find out what Billy does after, and if B7 came with him or not. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube, like, and follow us on TikTok at the Funky Play Bros. Follow us on Instagram at the Funky Play Brothers. Support our vlog Instagram at the cashapp, the $sign Funky Play Brothers, so we can have more unboxings, more taste tests, more adventures, more monies, and for support. Thank you for watching. Bye.